Hello, Uganda. Good evening and welcome to this special edition of On the Spot. My name is Beti Kamya. Tonight, we talk about the fight against corruption because on December 9th, it's the International Anti-Corruption Day. And Uganda will be reflecting on this day in the district of Ibanda in Western Uganda. Fighting corruption is one of the elements that is embedded in the 10-point program of the NRM government. It is also one of the points of the Sustainable Development Goals. But where are we in the fight against this monster that seems to be rising always from the dust like the phoenix? My guest this evening is the Inspectorate of Government, the Honorable Beti Oliver Namisango. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Patrick, and good evening yourself and good evening, viewers.
You are the fighter and you are at the helm of the fight against corruption.
True.
One day I read a newspaper article quoting you that Uganda loses about 10 trillion Uganda shillings through corrupt tendencies. And that's almost like a quarter of Uganda's budget. In this fight, Beti, are you winning?
One, yes, you read right. And that was the result of a study, a scientific study that was done by an international research organization, and it was commissioned by the Inspectorate of Government in 2021. And the results of the study indeed was that Uganda could be losing up to 10 trillion shillings in corruption. And they also defined the avenues through which it is lost. Singled out as most prominent are under declaration and non-declaration of taxes, under declaration and non-declaration of user fees, inflated government payroll where ghost workers and ghost service consumers are reflected in the payroll, schools, hospitals, and all government departments. And by the way, government has over 6,000 payroll government votes, and on each of those payroll, the study estimated that it is inflated with a higher pay than should be paid. Then there is absenteeism from work. A lot of people go to work, they get paid full salaries, they don't even go to work. They don't even show up for work. I think in a week, they could show up in about 2 or 3 days. That was also computed. Then there is also undervaluation of minerals. The mineral wealth of Uganda is grossly undervalued according to the study. So when you put, and of course, procurement where everything that government procures has, they call it difference. It's overloaded by kickbacks and corruption issues. Contracts of roads and construction buildings and other things, they are loaded with the kickbacks and inflated prices.
Now,
so when you put all this together.
Honorable, if you could stop there, because you seem to understand where the problem is. You actually know it like the back of your hand.
Yes.
And I'm sure even your predecessors knew the same. The question is, why can't you plug the loopholes?
I think the problem, I'll tell you what the problem, after doing some, going back to the drawing board, we found that we started the war against corruption from the tail end of the war, because corruption happens after violation of rules and regulations. Now, when you read the Constitution and the Inspectorate of Government Act, the first function of the Inspectorate of Government is to foster and promote strict adherence to the rule of law and administration of justice. They call it strict adherence to the rule of law and administration and principles of fair justice in governance. Now, if you start from there, Corruption is a product of violation of rules, regulation, and laws. It is when they are violated that the end product is corruption. So it is at the tail end. Now, the framers of the Constitution, I think, were very wise. They said, your job is to ensure you educate people about strict adherence to the rule of law and following rules of natural justice. But what happens, we wait for the fact to be committed, and then we take up arms to do a post-mortem on the body. So I think, going back to the drawing board, we need to revise our strategy and begin with prevention. And prevention is precisely defining what corruption is, giving corruption a face, then taking up arms, mobilizing the whole population to understand the impact of corruption on service delivery. You turn up the mindset of the population against corruption.
Now,
but what we are doing for us, we started the war at the tail end.
On Friday, I understand you're going to be in Uganda reflecting on the International Day, Anti-Corruption Day.
True.
As the Inspectorate of Government, as you as an individual, what will you be reflecting on?
Well, this is a day that was designated by United Nations General Assembly to mobilize the whole world to reflect. Many people say to celebrate. You can't celebrate corruption, but we reflect on the cost, on the impact, on the dangers, on the evils of corruption. So it's like, take out a day in your space, in the globe, wherever you are, and reflect on the evils of corruption. But this calls, discussing it now like we are doing, is a good thing, because there are people who didn't know what causes corruption, how much, and the impact. And if you give me a minute, I can even draw you a picture of what 10 trillion shillings can do if you saved it in this country.
Please do.
We have about 10,000 parishes, going by the parish development model. Now, if you divide 10 trillion into our 10,000 parishes, each parish would then benefit from 1 trillion, or get, not 1 trillion, 1 billion shillings per year. Now, if you're listening to me, go back to your parish, and I'm going back to my parish, Lunguja Parish. And if Lunguja Parish, through the parish development model, was to receive 1 billion shillings per year for 5 years, there would be
a big difference.
There would be a big difference. There would be transformation. So when people understand that at the parish level, that you could be entitled to 1 billion shillings per year, and if I was a member of Lunguja Parish Council and they asked me what I would do with it, the first thing I would say, year one, let us put it in Lunguja Parish Circle. That means that everybody would have access to working capital. And that's a great start. Then the following day you build a school. The following year you build a hospital. And in 5 years, there will be real transformation. So when people understand this, reflect on this, they will want to do something about it.
But Honorable Beti, when you state the affairs of Uganda and how corruption is eating up to the bone marrow, and you are the ombudsman, or the Inspectorate of Government, what frustrates you? Are you not a frustrated public official?
Yes, I am, but also one who is determined to do something about it. For instance, even taking the decision to understand the extent by commissioning a study, which cost quite a bit of money, so that you give it a face, so that you understand who we're dealing with. In this case, we are dealing with tax collectors who get paid a salary to collect taxes, but when they collect taxes, they collect them into their pockets, you know? So now you have to find, to design a strategy for that. We are dealing with people who inflate government payroll, head teachers, managers of hospitals and other public institutions. Now we know whom we are dealing with, the managers of the government payroll. So when you know the monster, that means you have given corruption a face. Then it is easier to design a strategy by strategy, for each of those are identified channels through which money is lost.
When you sit with the appointing authority, the person who appointed you is the president of Uganda. When he came to power in 1986, one of the things he mentioned in his 10-point program was the fight against corruption.
Yes.
Almost 40 years later, he seems not really have gotten his way in finding a solution in dealing with this problem. At the highest level of government, when you sit with the people who make decisions for Uganda, what do you talk about? Don't you and the colleagues at the highest level see that you have failed?
No, we haven't failed.
Yeah, because
but
if
you
we
could
are now
say
losing
failed.
10 trillion shillings a year, that's colossal failure.
Patrick, do you know what? The fight against corruption is as old as humanity. If you want, go back to the Garden of Eden. And if you want, check the Quran and check the Bible and any other books of faith. There are quotations, there are condemnations, there are advices on corruption. So it's as old as that, and in the whole world, it's not even in Uganda alone. There is an exercise that is called the corruption perception, that results into the Corruption Perception Index. And it monitors 180 countries around the world on their success in dealing with corruption. You know what? There is no country that has 100%.
There has been a joke on social media, Honorable Kamya.
Yes.
And the joke is somebody talking about corruption.
Yes.
And he mentions the countries that are corrupt. Or in Africa, about 4 or 5 of them. But then one person says, how come you're not even mentioning Uganda among these countries? And the guy answers, well, when you're talking about the sinners, you don't bring in the devil. Apparently, Uganda is so up there.
Yeah, that's
it's
true.
It's the devil incarnate
because
in terms of corruption.
Uganda is within the top 40 countries on the scale of 1 to 180. Uganda happens to be within the top 40 most corrupt countries. But as you know, I'm not making excuses for anything. I'm saying it's a good thing that we know this, we talk about it, and we mobilize the whole population now to get angry. Actually, we are inciting the population. Because you know what hurts me the most is that the population of Uganda are even condoning corruption by expecting public servants to live a life which is beyond their income. They don't care how much money I earn. What they want to see, if I got a job yesterday, they want to, if my daughter got a job yesterday in government, they don't care that she's getting a salary of 1 million. What they care about is that she has a car, she's traveling there, she's doing what, oh my, you know. And if they don't see that, they will say that boy is silly. Why isn't he doing like so-and-so's son? So the people expect, by fueling corruption, they expect people to live a corruption-fueled life. So we must begin with the mindset of the people, to tell them that corruption is bad and it hurts you. The people must put themselves in the shoes of the victim, not just an observer.
We woke up to a headline in the Daily Monitor today, which I'm sure must have been like sweet music to your ears, that the government recovers 240 billion Uganda shillings from thieving officials. That you recover that money, I'm sure.
Yeah,
why don't you accelerate that and recover even much more?
And we should, and these are the strategies that we are putting together to find where our weaknesses are so that we can clog them. And I think we are moving in the right direction, especially by now bringing in the entire population. Because in the past, the population were observers and at best commentators. Now we want them to be participants and watchdogs. We are mobilizing the population as victims to be watchdogs and participants in the
I don't
war.
know how, just a few minutes back, you said the population is condoning corruption. I wonder how the same population that is condoning corruption can be on the lookout to fight against the same.
Through mindset change. That's what we are saying now. We are going to handle them through mindset change by telling them that that person whom you are calling Mzee because he bought a 600 million car yesterday when he didn't have a job 6 months ago, that could be your money. Don't call him Mzee. Ask yourself where he's getting the money from, whether it is commensurate with his or her salary. So it's very important to work on the mindset change so that people now stop being cheerers of corruption, but watchdogs and fighters, warriors against corruption.
Tomorrow,
very important mindset
on
change.
Friday, you'll be in Uganda and you'll be having a platform to address the country. And I wonder if you can maybe have an opportunity to hear from you before you speak there. What should we expect from you to tell the country as the world, reflects on the cancer of corruption?
Indeed, like you said, the world is reflecting. We are going to tell the people the level of corruption or the cost of corruption in the country and the opportunity cost of that cost, what it could do for people. And we want people now to own the war. People must know if you took your relative to hospital and he died because there is no medicine, it is because your so-called rich neighbor took the money that would have bought medicine. And when he comes to the funeral and gives you a condolence of 500,000, you make him stand up in public and clap for him and say, we couldn't even get the body from the hospital, but the generosity of this man, But this man is the one who stole the money that could have bought medicine. So we want people, we want to give corruption a face. And when we give corruption a face, we mobilize the people to recognize corruption and then put themselves in the shoes of the victim of corruption and then take up arms, which arms we shall tell them to fight corruption. Only that protracted people's war can win corruption. But this war fought by technocrats, which you are expecting, and politicians and activists cannot be won because the people are fighting here when the population is down here. And these technocrats like myself and politicians and activists are like paid mercenaries. They get a salary. And when you get a better job or your contract ends, you even move away and may never talk about corruption again because it doesn't really hurt you.
No,
you have enough money.
Yesterday I was just in a conversation with a young man who's riding a border. And it could have been just any conversation. He's frustrated, he's not making ends meet, and he said it in a local language that, you know, this government knows how to sell things. They've sold so many things. Why can they maybe sell this country? But why everybody may look very
People
funny.
are very innovative, very creative. Or frustrated. I don't know.
Do you realize the sense of frustration from Ugandans? The guy is thinking, could there be some guy who can just buy Uganda and they give me my thing and they go? The sense of frustration is so high. Why? Because there has been no service delivery. We are standing on a mountain of bitterness in this city, but also some people feel a depth or an abyss of injustice. So you are not likely to find allies to
but they
help
should
you
also
in the fight
look,
against this
people
monster
have got
called
to look
corruption.
inside themselves. And this is part of the awareness campaign that we have. If you, Mr. Border, you are riding a border, that one who talked to you, I'm talking to him.
The frustrated man.
Does he have?
There's no service delivery.
Does he have a license to ride the border? When he was arrested yesterday for bad driving, did he go to court or did he pay off the policeman? I mean, you might find that we are all guilty, which is we should all confess our sins and now fight corruption. And it begins with everybody. Everybody. You who gives the bribe, you who takes it. Because a policeman stops you for bad driving and wants you to go to court to face the law. But you don't want to go to court. So you entice the policeman and give him money so that you don't go to court. And the bad driving continues. So you, the frustrated person, are also
so how about the leaders, the elected leaders? We give them a mandate to lead and to use our resources efficiently and fairly and in a just manner. But the way how they come into office, Honorable Olive, you know this, you have been a politician, you've campaigned many times. You know how money exchange hands, how literally politicians are buying mandates from the people.
Yes.
How can they be at the... I mean, they lack the moral authority to talk about issues of integrity.
That's what the president told the youth yesterday. Why are electing people who are not suitable, but because they give you money? And why don't you pull them out?
Has he not himself fallen short of that glory?
I don't know whether he has or not.
Yes, I want to tell you that he too has fallen short.
If he has, so has the other people also. So if we are all guilty, we better all come together and do something about it.
But you are aware as a politician that most of our leaders actually, not most, quite a number of them have been elected not because they have represented a very good manifesto upon which Ugandans can decide, but because they have been able to buy the votes.
You are telling me I could be a witness.
Oh, you could have bought.
No, I could have been an MP. I could be the MP right now. But Patrick, that is the whole mindset change that we are talking about. If I'm here, I've heard rumors that even people going to Iyala have to cough a lot of money. And who gets the money?
Members of Parliament.
So you can imagine the level at which schools, students want to go for prefect elections. Who gives them money and sweets to take to fellow students? And which teachers allow that? So it's a society problem.
So do you realize
we have to work on it?
Sadly, do you realize that you seem to be fighting the way of life?
Yes. And
corruption has become a way of life.
It is, I admit. But we have to uproot it. Because at some time before Christianity and before Islam, before the modern religions came, there was a way of life, but it was uprooted. So with the adequate motivation and commitment, this way of life, even in other countries too, there was a lot of corruption, but we can see changes on the scale of bringing it down. So something can be done. There are countries in Europe which are ruled by mafias, and you know that this is a government of mafias, you know? But there must be willpower to do something.
The government commissioned that study to find out the extent of corruption, and that's what we quote from the 10 trillion. And I'm sure within that report, really, you should be having the mechanism through which by now you should be standing on the issue, on that monster head of corruption and dealing with it, because you have understood, you have actually invested in a lot of money, and you have a lot of agencies that should be helping you in fighting corruption. You're not alone, including the State House Anti-Corruption. You have courts, anti-corruption courts. You have accountability committees of Parliament headed by the members of the opposition. You have the Auditor General who's supposed to be looking through the books of accounts of public officials. I mean, there are so many people right now. This month we're going to earn money because their job is to monitor public resources, but the hemorrhage continues.
That's true. But it will, our determination is to bring it down. Like you have said, we have so many institutions of government that are engaged in this war against corruption. Speaking for ourselves as an inspectorate of government, only in 2021 did we take the initiative to commission a study to understand the channels where the hemorrhage happens. And I have told you, under declaration of taxes. So the next thing we are going to have to do is to look into there.
Yeah, but since the study was done,
it's just
as if you're standing by to watch
Patrick,
and let it happen.
No, Patrick, you're not fair. It's just 1 year. How much can be done in 1 year? Then you sit down, go to the drawing board, and start making out strategies. You know how we work. We do the SWOT analysis. We do consultations. We need a budget to do this and that. So for me, We have done a lot of work in 1 year only to be able to determine that and the channels through which it is flowing. And the new strategy, the strategies of giving corruption a face. There are people who didn't even know what corruption was. But we are giving corruption a face. We're saying that car which that man is driving, which is not commensurate with his known source of income, is the face of corruption. Once you give something a face, then you are onto the right track to deal with it. So I want to say that I think we are on the right track. And as I said before, we had started on the tail end of the problem by waiting for it to happen so that we prosecute, investigate, and prison. Now we have decided, while that is continuing, now we are going to start with prevention. And prevention through education, sensitization, mobilization, and even incitement of the general public to be part of the war against corruption. So it is, in my opinion, I think we are doing a lot of work by arranging the kitchen. For you want to hear the butunguru, you want to see the food on the table. It doesn't happen that way. People have to go to the bush and collect firewood and water, and the tail end is the food on the sigiri. That's what you want to see. But the work that goes into getting the food on the sigiri is a lot of work, Patrick, and we need to do that.
So do you have how are you working with these agencies? Because sometimes I could imagine there could even be a duplication of roles. Yes, you want all the army, all hands on deck, but all hands on deck doing the same thing. Don't you have an element of collusion there?
We actually don't do the same thing. The Office of the Auditor General, for instance, deals with the post-mortem, and they're doing a great job. The report says that this year alone, they covered over 6,000 votes that they looked into. The Office of the PPDA deals particularly with procurement issues, tendering processes and procurement. That's the specialty of the PPDA. The CID is more police work. It doesn't have to be corruption, but also a lot more than even outside corruption things, criminal things. That's the DPP and CID. ISO collects intelligence. You start working on this beginning with intelligence. It is intelligence or whistleblower action that sets you on to the job now. So ISO do a lot of work to collect intelligence. Then the Inspectorate of Government has other functions of educating, of prevention, of procurement, prosecution, of recovery, of recovery and other things. So really, we don't do. There's I think a lot of propaganda, let me call it, for lack of a better word, and I apologize to anybody who is hurt by my limitation in words. But I think there's more propaganda than reality. The only institution that is said to work like the Inspectorate of Government is State House Anti-Corruption Unit, but who also complement the work, because State House Anti-Corruption Unit do a bit of what we do, but they are limited also in a mandate. So they complement. They can't prosecute. They can't make orders. They can't summon.
So what happens when you find all of you, State House Anti-Corruption Agency and the Inspectorate of Government, super focused on the same problem, the same maybe individual, the same office?
Actually, we are having coordination. We have a coordination meetings and a coordination program. We meet once every 3 years, 3 months, under the coordination of Directorate of Ethics and Integrity, just to make sure that we don't step on each other's toes and that we don't overlap. And we have agreed to consult. If an activity I'm investigating is more of a procurement activity, then I will send it to PPDA. And if like recently, State House and Health Monitoring Unit doing some work in Mulago. Matters that had to do with the leadership code, that is acquisition of wealth, unexplained acquisition of wealth. They sent it to us. So we have started, I think, a healthy collaboration strategy so that we don't duplicate work and resources.
Madam Inspector of Government, hold on to your point because we're going to take a break, and on the spot we'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Beti Kamya. My guest tonight is the Inspector of Government, the Honorable Oliver Namsango Kamya. And on 9th of December, Uganda will be joining the rest of the world to reflect on the monster of corruption. You know, I know that report that was commissioned 2021 that talks about 10 trillion Uganda shillings lost in corruption. Honorable Beti, that's a lot of money. That money alone can actually be deployed to neutralize you, to intimidate you. I even fear to say it can even put people out of action.
That's
that
true.
money alone.
True.
Do you realize that?
True, except that it is littered. Like a government school in Rakai district, which inflates, by the way, there are, I think, over now close to 20,000 schools together. But if each school inflates its payroll by 10 million, that's a lot of money. The health center, I mean, that is a spread, unless all the head teachers come together. You also had a report where State House Health Monitoring Unit unearthed 33 ghost health centers in one district alone. So you might want to multiply that by 146 districts to see the number of ghost health centers in this country, which have been receiving salaries for staff and payment of rent and utilities and drugs and equipment for maybe 5 years. That's a lot of money.
It could be scattered, and I want to agree to scatter, but in some cases you find some people are holding huge sums of money as individuals.
Yes, absolutely.
And that money can be deployed to
Whole
fight
roads.
the inspectorate of government.
Whole roads. We are here by the grace of God, truly by the grace of God, but also because by the time the investigations begin, it is kind of, there's a lot of information out there.
Let me ask you this, but because of course you when you are in office like this, you'll not be walking on the streets like the likes of us. But if you were, I'm sure you'd be walking well, looking behind your shoulders.
That's true. Even now I do. But like we said, we are given security, but the most security is always from God.
Let me try to digress a little bit, because Uganda is paying reparation to the Democratic Republic of Congo. The DRC took us to court because when the UPDF was there in the 90s, apparently they plundered and looted and killed. And a couple of months back, I think we paid about $65 million. The people who stole money or looted or plundered the Congo, they were not plundering on our behalf. They're not plundering for the flag. They're plundering for their own individual gain. Why is a country paying for the sins of individual soldiers?
I don't know whether I am the right person to answer that question, but it's certainly a very interesting reflection.
But you know about this, don't you?
Oh yes, of course. I know they were not plundering for the country. Like I said, they're not plundering
but the country,
for the
but we're getting from a public kitty money that should have built our hospitals, our roads, our infrastructure, is now being paid as a fine to the Congolese government. But the individual soldiers who were there, probably they are known, they had their commanders. I have never understood why on earth a country is paying for the sins of individual soldiers if they never plundered in our name, did they?
No, I don't. No, of course not. They didn't. Of course not. They didn't. And like I said, it is one of these things that need to be looked into.
And by the way, that brings me to the lifestyle audit, because people who could have gotten money or even getting money in many other corrupt tendencies are living large. And, you know, in prime areas, in places that are exclusive, sometimes in gated communities that are exclusive. And I remember you talking about starting the lifestyle audit. How far have you gone with this lifestyle audit?
The lifestyle audit is a very effective method of pinning down and recovering funds, public funds, from people from whom you cannot get adequate evidence in court to convict them. You see, our judicial system, most of the times, when you take people to court, court requires you to adduce evidence beyond reasonable doubt. And also our judicial system is based on the innocent until proven guilty principle. Now, this is related to the public outcry on this big fish, small fish. And my understanding of big fish, because when I find somebody who has signed for money and not delivered on what they're supposed to deliver, and I take them to court and they are convicted, people say, that's a small fish. We want a big fish. Why don't you get all these big fish? And by big fish, I understand them to mean big name politicians. But you see, big name politicians do not leave footprints. They do not sign checks.
No, what do we expect
they
as
do not
Ugandans?
Sign checks.
What do we expect as Ugandans? If there is an allegation against an individual in the highest position of leadership on the tendencies of lack of integrity, that person at least should be able to step aside and then the investigation is done. I can give you examples. You know, at one point we had our own Minister of Foreign Affairs, huge allegation from the United Nations and the government in the United States that there has been a corruption tendency allegation against him. And you know, and somebody who allegedly was with him was even arrested. What should have been the best thing to do? Such individuals, step aside, clear your name, and come back.
But that's the mindset change we are talking about. The law does not require it, because the law assumes you are innocent until proven guilty. Now, proving guilty is a whole different story, because it requires people to sign documents and to be seen and to be what. That's a completely different story, which is very, very hard. And most cases are dismissed from court because the evidence could not stand in court. Now, to answer your question, that is where the mindset change of the entire society would come in, because people self-censor themselves, which does not happen in Uganda. In other countries, people self-censor easily, you know, for something that happens under your watch, not even being suspected to have done it, but for it to happen under your watch. So we need a whole mindset change of the entire society.
It's good. It's good. This week we are reflecting as a globe, as
the world,
as humanity,
yes,
on the issue of corruption. And I want to bring an example of just 2 days back, when the South African President Cyril Ramaphosa was having trouble with his own party. Why? Because about $4 million was lost in his own home. There was a theft of money in his own home, and the ANC party, you know, is vigorously investigating him, including other members of parliament telling him, you know what, you should go. And he said, I am in the hands of the ANC. And before him, Jacob Zuma actually left because of allegations of lack of integrity. We want to reach that level whereby public officials must not only get scared of touching public resources, but if they do, they should pay. Or if there is a mere allegation, stand aside and your name is cleared, then you can come back.
That is our desire, most of us. That's our desire. But you know, it's not just here in Uganda. People like, and I don't even think this is a very good example, but it's a society we are talking about. People, even American presidents, you know, presidents of America, Bill Clinton on the Lewinsky affair, Richard Nixon on Watergate, Donald Trump, even, you know, they resist. Human nature is to first resist until you cannot stand anymore, and you are pushed by the moral turpitude of the entire population.
So for this audit to happen, when somebody gets into office, they should be able to give you what they had they own.
That's the law.
And then after some years, you should be able to go and see what have they acquired. But first of all, do you have an army of officers who will be able to monitor all public officials on what they have? Because I don't think you have a team of people who will be able to investigate everybody to understand who has what.
No, of course we don't. And I don't think it is intended that we should verify everybody. But keep a record. Like you say, everybody, we have, the whole country have a record of everybody, you know, of everybody. And when you acquire property, register it with the minister, with the Ministry of Lands, or with the ministry, with a relevant government institution, so that there's a record. And if you're a public officer, register all your assets and liabilities, income assets and liabilities. It is not a requirement that we should verify everybody, but we should do sample verification, just make sure that things are generally okay. But in the event that you need to be called to answer, that will be a basis, that there will be a basis.
Are Ugandan officials complying with the lifestyle audit?
The lifestyle audit has not started.
Yes. Well, this is something you've been talking about.
It was launched by the president a year ago on the 9th of December 2021. Now, after launching, then we need a legal framework in which to implement the lifestyle audit. So we've spent this year working on the legal framework, and we are almost there. I want to promise the country that in the next couple of months, the legal framework
how is that
will be
fundamentally different from the legal requirement to declare for a public, for example, what you have? Because I forget the name of the real law, but every leader is supposed to declare their property, right? That's how the Honorable Kemal Chamuzi was kicked out of Parliament.
Yes.
So how are they different?
It is slightly different because...
Why bring another law yet you have if you only implemented what you have, it can bring you the dividends you require.
No, because it's slightly different because I require you to explain your lifestyle. For instance, if you go for a holiday every year with your family abroad, that is not declared, you know, that is not declared. If you have some other things which are not declared, some things are not declared. So if I ask you to give an account of your lifestyle, I think we need a legal framework. Otherwise, somebody
you actually want to turn the IGG office like a spy ring to be watching over everybody like Big Brother. Where have they traveled? What have they eaten? And
that's part of the lifestyle. It's okay for you to travel,
want to do, really?
But are you using public funds?
No, I'm saying those who are using public funds.
Those who are using public funds.
You want to have the eagle eye view on everyone.
That's why you're mobilizing the whole country. Yes, the eagle eye view. That's why we are mobilizing the whole country to be watchdogs. Everybody to be their brother's keeper. So lifestyle audit, we are working on the legal framework, especially for the lifestyle audit. And sometimes, true, people are required to declare their wealth to the IG. Now, if you have not declared it, if there are some things you have not declared, it might require a legal framework to get you to to justify how you got it.
But in this city, we have pseudo billionaires who actually, behind them, you could find other individuals who perhaps who could even be public officials owning all of these things. It could be hotels and arcades in the name of somebody else, yet the real person is somebody who's getting a salary from taxpayers. How do you avoid that reverse takeover where they can go behind and they take their things? How do you get I'm going to put my property in the name of Munira,
and they
I'm actually a public official.
And they do, but good thing that you have to take that risk. Before this law, you didn't have to take that risk. Putting your things in the name of Munira, I think you do it with a heavy heart, in whatever names. And we even found people who have put things in the names of their household staff, who are even living in the villages, and they have phone numbers of very, very distant relatives in which they, but that the investigators are very,
so if you find,
they know how to find it.
If you find an individual who is not working with the government, but yet there are so many property listed under his name,
he's also
and a
suspect.
private person, are you going to investigate them too?
There's the Anti-Corruption Act through which they can be traced, because it begins with suspecting so and so, you know. Investigations are very interesting, because I could find that person who I could find a phone number which you repeatedly call, and that phone number can lead me to so many things which relate me to the houseboy, and then you find that the houseboy owns malls and mansions, and when you ask him, he says, I have no clue. You know, there are always ways of
on the 21st of December, I think, December 2021, I think, when you launched the
lifestyle
audit. If I remember correctly, I don't think you had the full support of the chief executive of the country, did you?
He cautioned. He cautioned us and said, be careful with the lifestyle audit, because it could trigger an outflow of money from Uganda to other countries. So, and that is the reality. So, Patrick and dear listeners.
So, wait a minute on that very issue. President Yoweri Museveni is cautioning you to go slow on the lifestyle audit.
Not to go slow, to be cautious.
To be cautious.
Yes.
Because money could get out. Does that mean if corrupt money stays in Kampala, that's good for us?
It is better than corrupt money outside.
So is he of the school of thought that if it is used within Uganda, that's okay?
No.
Yeah,
that's not. I think
because obviously his worry was, no, the corrupt are going to take the money out. Go cautiously.
Patrick,
what is that supposed to mean?
For me, this is the reality. That decision makers, even judges, sometimes are called to make balanced decisions. Take an example. A man kills his wife or beats his wife, and you take them before the judge, and the wife is dead, and there are 5 children who are wholly dependent on this man. So the judge has to make a decision whether to commit this man to the gallows because he killed someone, or to give him a lighter sentence because of these children. So decision makers are faced with very complex decisions. But what the president said, be cautious, but most important, went ahead and launched the lifestyle audit. He launched it, which is why we are moving, we are rolling it out, beginning
with the guidance of the president. How cautiously is the Honorable Beti Kamya going on this issue of lifestyle?
I don't even think we need to be cautious, because the whole world is up in arms against corruption. You know how difficult it can be to siphon money out of the country. You want to open a bank account in the UK or any other country, they will ask you source of the money. If you keep putting money on your account, they will ask you for the source of those funding. You want to buy property, they will ask you where you're getting the money from. So it is not as easy as it used to be before, when we had the Swiss banks and in Zurich. Things have changed now because there's a world effort to fight corruption.
How do you get,
and Uganda is part of the world effort.
There's also a possibility, and I'm stretching this by all means, that your own officials here could also see an opportunity to make money by intimidating an individual who could be, you know, under the scope, under the microscope.
Yeah, we have even had people complaining sometime, and we follow it up and sanction. We have just interdicted yesterday a staff here as we are doing investigations.
Yeah,
yes.
I brought that out because I knew about this.
You did?
Yes.
So you're trying to catch me?
It's good. No, it's good you revealed it. So you can see
we interdicted the staff yesterday so that we
do. You realize that corruption has eaten the society to the bone marrow, that even the institutions that are supposed to be fighting corruption, they themselves sometimes lack the integrity they deserve.
You know why tax collectors were hated during those days of Jesus? Tax collectors. You remember the story even that Jesus said of the man who was a manager of his master and who used to take bribes, I think, and when his master got to know about it and wanted to sack him, called all of them and told them to pay half, and the rest to him, things like that. So corruption is actually part of nature. Okay. The rebellious part of nature.
I just want to know
corruption.
from you.
But what we need to do is to have, the corruption will be there, like they said, but woe to him that promotes it. And what we need to do is to have measures in place to fight it.
Is it also maybe possible that when the corrupt actually invest the money in a society where they have stolen it, probably the society does not lose completely? There's a school of thought that so long as it is invested within, then that's okay.
Yeah, but it's not okay because it diverts investment from public good. The money is supposed to make a road. Then one rich man takes it all, and then he builds a house and people get jobs by being constructors in that house. It distorts the program. The program was for the money to build a road so that everybody has cheaper transport costs and have easy access to markets and public good. So it is not okay at all. It is public money should be public money.
So I want to go back to the legislators because their job is to appropriate funds. Their job is also to do oversight, and their job is also to do make laws. And I'm sure even when you want to make a law on lifestyle, you'll be going to them. But when the report comes from the Auditor General and it goes to public accounts and COSAS and all these areas, do you feel that Parliament is doing its job? I know it is part of post-mortem, like, because they are dealing with what has come from the Auditor General's report. But do you think they are doing the job?
Actually, Parliament has done both because they have enacted laws up front. They've done a good job to enact laws. And when the executive nominates officials like myself, Parliament vets them to ensure that they can do a good job. So by making laws and vetting public officers, what comes after is oversight. Was everything done according to the law that we made? To that extent, I think Parliament is doing their work. What we need is to invest more resources in the mindset change of the entire population of Uganda so that they stop condoning corruption.
I have most of the time followed these committee investigations on individuals who are in charge of public officials, but I don't think they have been followed up their logical conclusion where that public official maybe has been made to cough the money or we have not lost resources. The talk is there, but somehow the investigation loses steam and we will never get to know what has been done at the end.
What we have done here...
And by the way, you yourself have been to these committees.
True.
You have not found it very easy yourself.
No, I didn't. I've been to COSASE,
yes,
but I was not satisfied with their decision, and so I appealed to court for a judicial review. And so it is matter of sub judice. But I have taken it to court for judicial review.
Yeah, but me, as somebody who's just a consumer of news, to see our inspector of government before a committee of parliament, I mean, you know, sometimes what is being exchanged, I'm like, okay, wait a minute. You know, somebody who should supposed to be fighting for us is actually fighting for her life.
Well, there are so many reasons why people do not think the same way, because one would think that a responsible member of parliament would respect that and at least give a hearing outside the public, and then if they find you guilty, then they can put it out in the public. I think normally what they would do is to have a closed hearing.
Okay,
it is perfectly allowed, but that is judicious.
As we try to conclude this discussion, I want to shed a light on the kind of impunity that is so much in this country, that people disregard the laws in broad daylight without any care, whether it's on the road, how they drive, and that will also show you how they can spend public resources, how they disregard everybody else. There's so much impunity in this country exhibited on our roads. I wouldn't be surprised if that impunity is not exhibited in public offices, within the walls, in these marbled halls of government where you see it.
Yes,
it's too much impunity. Do you realize that we live in a city with too much impunity?
Yes, which is why, Patrick, I said the IG has gone back to the drawing board and said our first function in the Constitution is to foster and promote strict adherence to the rule of law. We have gone back to the drawing board and said to ourselves, let us pay attention to that constitutional mandate. And what we need is the support from everybody, including the resource allocation. In some countries, I'll tell you, Patrick, and listeners, the IG, as we have it in Uganda, has 3 separate institutions, each one with a separate budget, with a separate administration, with a separate set of laws. In Kenya, for instance, there is the Office of the Ombudsman, then there's the Office of Anti-Corruption, then there's the Office of Asset Recovery. They're completely different institutions with full budgets and support. Now here, they're all under one administration, which is okay, but give them the budget of 3 functions, not the budget of 1 function when you're doing the budget of 3 functions. But fortunately, since my administration a year ago, when we came to office, we've talked to both Parliament and the Executive, and within 6 months of my occupation of this office, our budget was raised by 48%. I appreciate that. From 43 billion, which had been given every year for the previous 4 years. Last year we got 79 billion, which is a 48% increase. So I think that the dialogue, the more we talk to the managers of the resources of the budget, we're beginning to see understanding.
As we conclude our discussion this evening, give us hope. Where's the hope? Where's that glimmer of hope in this fight?
The glimmer of hope is in the public owning the war. And they're doing well, because we are getting so many now whistleblowers with inside information. And I want to thank those whistleblowers. They send you information. For instance, the information that led us to recover 9 billion from Ministry of Agriculture was very, carefully brought out information that led to investigation, that led to the recovery of 9 billion.
You have won
shillings.
Clearly some battles, but are you winning the war?
We have to win it. We don't have a choice. We have to win it. Not I, we. What I do is to provide leadership. But I'm here to tell Ugandans, it is your war, dear Ugandans, because you are the victims of corruption. I have already told you that technocrats, activists, and politicians are at best mercenaries, paid mercenaries to fight this war. And there are some of them are even perpetrators and even practitioners, because they are within the vicinity of where it can be practiced. So the war is really for the public, and I'm calling upon the public to take this. Don't just say, 10 trillion is a lot of money. It's a lot of money, but what it means is that that's why your father died.
Honorable Beti, we are truly honored and grateful for you having given us your precious time. But quite frankly, and be very briefly, what could be your concluding remark on the show tonight?
My concluding remarks, ladies and gentlemen, on Friday, we shall be in the Ibanda district to reflect on the cost and impact of corruption. We are calling upon religious leaders, political leaders, especially political leaders, and we have talked to them, speakers of local councils, to take out a special council session and discuss corruption in your jurisdiction. When you have discussed it thoroughly and made a resolution, file your resolution with us so that we link up with you and see how to fight corruption in your jurisdiction. That's for the political leaders. As for the religious leaders, we are working with them, and we have asked them to make corruption a key issue in churches and mosques and other houses of faith. Teach people about corruption as it is taught in your faiths and quoted. And also the cultural leaders. Those are the three channels through which we are going to reach the household, because the political, the faith, and the cultural channels have structures that come from the top right to the household.
The Inspector General of Government, Honorable Beti Kamya, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you too for
inviting me.
inviting
And for you Ugandans, I believe we have a good country and we are good people. Let's deploy our goodness for the betterment of Uganda. It's possible. Good night and God bless Uganda.